Original Timeline. Rick Sanchez wasn't always the chaotic genius we know. In Timeline C-137, Rick lived as a devoted family man with wife Diane and daughter Beth. This Rick worked regular hours, attended family dinners, and built science projects without endangering anyone. His garage contained organized research notes and careful prototypes rather than weapons-grade chaos. The C-137 timeline functioned like any normal suburban household. Diane managed family life while supporting Rick's scientific interests. Beth grew up with both parents present, creating stable development. Rick's portal technology remained theoretical, impressive but harmless physics experiments. Everything changed when Rick Prime arrived. This alternative Rick had abandoned his own family decades earlier, developing a twisted philosophy that emotional attachments limited scientific potential. Rick Prime systematically targeted Rick variants who maintained healthy family relationships, viewing their happiness as evolutionary weakness. Rick Prime murdered Diane and Beth with a dimensional bomb, not for revenge, but because he believed families made Ricks inefficient. This assassination transformed Rick C-137 from family man to interdimensional hunter. This hunt required developing advanced portal technology, weapon systems, and dimensional tracking methods far beyond his original theoretical research. During his hunt, Rick discovered the true scope of infinite realities, dimensions where he became a pickle, where everyone was furniture, where Jerry ruled as emperor. Eventually, Rick abandoned his hunt and settled into a timeline where that dimension's Rick had died accidentally, leaving behind an intact family. Rick C-137 buried his dead counterpart and seamlessly replaced him, becoming the new Rick for this timeline's Beth, Jerry, Summer, and Morty. This replacement established Rick's approach to timeline problems. When situations became too dangerous, he would find an alternative reality where the problem didn't exist and start over. Rick began treating timelines like backup saves in a video game, except each save contained real people living real lives. The original timeline tragedy explains Rick's emotional detachment from his current family. They represent replacements for his murdered wife and daughter rather than his actual relatives. Hit that like button and subscribe. Check out Rick's heartbreaking final goodbye to Diane Explained and Analyzed to see how this tragic backstory connects to Rick's ultimate emotional journey. Cronenberg Disaster. The Cronenberg Disaster began with Morty's simple request for dating help and ended with the complete destruction of human civilization. This timeline demonstrates how Rick's quick fixes often create exponentially worse problems than the original issues. Morty convinced Rick to create a love potion that would make Jessica fall in love with him at the school dance. Rick developed a sophisticated chemical compound designed to trigger romantic attraction specifically toward Morty, but the formula contained a critical flaw. When Jessica contracted the flu, the love potion mutated upon contact with the flu virus. The mutated potion transformed from a targeted attraction serum into a highly contagious airborne agent. Instead of affecting only Jessica, the virus made everyone except Morty's direct genetic relatives fall obsessively in love with him. Students, teachers, parents, government officials, and eventually every human on Earth became violently infatuated with a 14-year-old boy. Rick attempted to fix the crisis by developing an antidote that would return the infected population to normal. However, Rick's rushed antidote contained a devastating error that triggered massive genetic transformations, converting every affected human into grotesque Cronenberg creatures. These Cronenberg creatures retained human intelligence and memories but existed in horrifically mutated bodies. Human civilization collapsed as billions became genetic abominations incapable of maintaining social structures. Rick attempted multiple additional chemical interventions, but each successive fix created new mutations rather than reversing the original transformations. Earth became a post-apocalyptic wasteland populated entirely by genetic monsters. Faced with an unfixable catastrophe of his own creation, Rick simply abandoned the timeline entirely. Rather than accepting responsibility for destroying an entire planet's worth of human life, Rick used his portal gun to locate a dimension where their alternative selves had successfully fixed an identical crisis, but died immediately afterward. Rick and Morty traveled to this alternative dimension, discovered their own corpses in the garage, and buried their dead counterparts in the backyard before seamlessly replacing them. The transition was so smooth that this dimension's Beth, Jerry, and Summer never realized their Rick and Morty had been replaced by refugees from a destroyed timeline. This experience fundamentally altered Morty's understanding of reality, consequences, and the value of individual existence. The Cronenberg timeline taught both Rick and Morty that running away from problems was often easier than solving them. Subscribe now. Check out every insane alternative version of the Smith family. Explained Season 8 included to see how these timeline disasters created even more twisted family variants. Finite Curve. The central finite curve represents the most elaborate security system ever constructed, designed to protect Rick variants from encountering beings who might be smarter than them. This mathematical barrier separates all realities where Rick is the most intelligent being from all realities where someone else might surpass his intellectual capabilities. Constructing this barrier required unprecedented cooperation among thousands of Rick variants. The project involved identifying every reality where Rick's intelligence exceeded all other beings, then creating dimensional walls to prevent travel between safe Rick territories and potentially dangerous external realities containing superintelligent aliens or advanced civilizations. Within the protected curve territory, the Citadel of Ricks established itself as the interdimensional government for Rick society. The Citadel operated as both a refuge for Rick variants and a regulatory system controlling interdimensional travel, technology sharing, and conflict resolution. The Citadel society developed its own complete economy and social hierarchy. Worker Ricks performed manual labor, scientist Ricks conducted research, political Ricks managed government functions, and military Ricks provided security. The society even included service Mortys who functioned as assistants and emotional camouflage for their respective Ricks. The most disturbing aspect of Citadel civilization was the systematic breeding and farming of Morty variants across multiple timelines. The Citadel operated industrial facilities where Jerry and Beth variants were forced into relationships, generating infinite Morty offspring who served as both dimensional camouflage and emotional buffers. Ricks had discovered that Morty's brainwaves naturally canceled out Rick's genius-level brainwaves, making them undetectable to enemies. Rather than finding willing companions, the Citadel industrialized Morty production, treating them like livestock and systematically torturing thousands in facilities designed to harvest their brainwaves as portal gun fuel. Rick C-137's designation as the Rickest Rick reflected his unique position as both insider and outsider. His reputation wasn't based solely on intelligence, but on his willingness to operate outside Citadel authority while remaining within curve boundaries. The central finite curve's existence meant that every adventure and timeline jump occurred within an artificially limited subset of infinite reality. The Smith family wasn't exploring true infinite possibilities, but navigating a carefully constructed prison designed to protect Rick's ego. Smash that subscribe button. Don't miss the end of the Citadel, what Season 8 really means for evil Morty, to understand how this conspiracy's destruction changed everything. Rick Prime's timeline. Rick Prime operates as the most dangerous Rick variant ever documented, representing what happens when Rick-level intelligence combines with complete sociopathy and unlimited technological resources. Rick Prime doesn't just abandon his family like other Ricks, he systematically hunts down and murders Rick variants' families across multiple dimensions because he believes emotional attachments represent evolutionary weaknesses. Rick Prime achieved scientific mastery early and immediately recognized that caring about people limited his potential, unlike other Ricks who gradually became emotionally distant through trauma. The timeline manipulation Rick Prime engineered spans decades and involves hundreds of different realities connected through his systematic attachment elimination protocols. These protocols involved identifying Rick variants who maintained positive family relationships, then destroying those relationships through targeted assassinations, psychological manipulation, or dimensional warfare. Rick Prime's assassination of Rick C-137's family wasn't isolated violence, but one campaign in a broader war targeting Rick variants with strong family bonds. Rick Prime maintained detailed intelligence files on every Rick variant within his operational range, cataloging their family attachment levels, technological capabilities, and potential threat status. The technology Rick Prime developed far exceeded standard Rick capabilities. His portal gun functioned on invisible frequencies, allowing undetected travel between realities. His weapons incorporated temporal manipulation, enabling attacks across multiple time periods simultaneously. Rick Prime operated from a pocket dimension created specifically for interdimensional warfare. This base contained manufacturing facilities for advanced weapons, temporal engineering equipment, and dimensional mapping systems tracking Rick variants across hundreds of timelines. The most chilling aspect was that Rick Prime's original timeline contained no Beth Sanchez because he had systematically eliminated every version of his daughter across multiple temporal periods. Unlike other Ricks who abandoned families through neglect, Rick Prime actively murdered every iteration of his family he encountered. Rick Prime's influence extended beyond direct assassinations into sophisticated psychological warfare designed to corrupt Rick variants' family relationships from within. He planted false evidence, distributed technology revealing the disposable nature of dimensional travel, and spread philosophical arguments about the futility of family attachments through interdimensional networks. The ultimate revelation was that Rick Prime had been manipulating Rick C-137's timeline choices for decades, steering him toward increasingly isolated and emotionally destructive situations. Rick Prime's goal wasn't simply revenge, but the systematic corruption of the most emotionally resilient Rick variant. Hit that notification bell. Watch Rick and Morty Season 8 Explained. The post-Prime era changes everything to see what happens after Rick Prime's defeat. Evil Morty's Timeline. Evil Morty accomplished the impossible. He outsmarted every Rick in existence and destroyed the prison that contained infinite realities. Evil Morty wasn't just rebelling against his individual Rick, he systematically dismantled the entire framework that kept Morty variants trapped in permanent subordination across all accessible dimensions. Evil Morty's timeline began identically to countless other Morty realities, with one crucial difference. This Morty possessed analytical intelligence that naturally exceeded normal parameters while remaining hidden from Rick monitoring systems. The critical turning point came when Evil Morty discovered the citadel of Ricks and understood that his situation wasn't personal abuse from one Rick, but systematic exploitation designed into reality's fundamental structure. Most Mortys who learn about the multiverse feel overwhelmed, but Evil Morty recognized that the entire system was engineered to ensure Morty permanent inferiority. Evil Morty's first major operation involved gaining complete control over his Rick through surgical implantation of a remote control device. This wasn't random violence, but calculated seizure of Rick-level technology and interdimensional access. The remote-controlled Rick became Evil Morty's puppet for accessing the Citadel and gathering comprehensive intelligence about Rick society's structure and weaknesses. Evil Morty used his controlled Rick to perform legitimate scientific work while secretly preparing for infiltration of the interdimensional government system. Evil Morty's presidential campaign at the Citadel marked his transition from covert operations to active political manipulation of Rick society from within. Understanding that direct confrontation would fail due to Rick's technological advantages, he positioned himself as a reform candidate advocating for improved Morty treatment while secretly preparing for complete systemic destruction. The presidency provided access to Citadel governmental systems, dimensional travel networks, and classified information about central Finite Curve operations. During his time in office, Evil Morty systematically gathered intelligence about curve construction methods and dimensional barrier technology. The timeline where Evil Morty discovered the Morty torture and farming operations represented the final catalyst, transforming his plans from personal escape to universal liberation. Evil Morty accessed classified facilities where thousands of Morty variants were systematically tortured to harvest their brainwaves for portal gun fuel. Evil Morty's escape plan required destroying the central Finite Curve itself, eliminating dimensional barriers that had protected Rick variants from encountering superior intelligences for generations. The plan involved hijacking the Citadel's portal system to generate a massive energy burst that would catastrophically breach the mathematical boundaries containing Rick civilization. The execution created a timeline cascade effect that fundamentally altered interdimensional travel for every remaining Rick variant. The curve's destruction eliminated artificial boundaries guaranteeing Rick supremacy, suddenly exposing Rick variants to dimensions containing beings with superior intelligence and technology. Like this video and subscribe. Don't miss Rick and Morty 12 Most Shocking Revelations for even more universe-shattering discoveries. Season 8 Developments. Recent timeline developments reveal that the most significant changes occur when Smith family members evolve beyond their traditional limitations rather than when new alternatives appear from external sources. These latest timelines demonstrate that every family member possesses hidden capabilities that exceed their established roles when circumstances provide opportunities for genuine growth without Rick's interference. The Wild West settlement timeline introduces Homesteader Rick, representing complete transformation of what Rick variants can become when they abandon scientific dominance in favor of community building. This timeline developed after the Citadel's destruction, when a former clone scientist chose agricultural settlement over technological reconstruction. Homesteader Rick's transformation from Citadel scientist to frontier farmer required abandoning advanced technology for practical survival skills. The most significant development was his decision to sacrifice himself protecting Morty clones, representing the first documented case of a Rick choosing death to save Mortys. The Arcade Town timeline demonstrates Morty variants achieving leadership capabilities that surpass anything previously documented. Arcade Morty operates both the town's entertainment facility and general store, managing complex business operations while maintaining positive relationships with fellow Mortys. The Road Timeline reveals Jerry variants achieving complete independence from family structures that traditionally defined Jerry's limitations. Mooch Jerry operates as an interdimensional traveler who abandoned all family responsibilities for personal freedom, developing genuine survival skills when removed from social pressures. Boss Jerry leads groups of Rogue Jerry variants along interdimensional highways, creating mobile communities operating outside traditional boundaries. Boss Jerry has developed authentic leadership skills, positioning him as the dominant Jerry among variants who chose escape over family obligation. Memory Rick's timeline exists as pure consciousness operating within Bird Person's mind, representing the first case of Rick variants transcending physical limitations through technological integration with other beings' mental processes. The simulation timeline, where Summer experiences 17 years of accelerated development, reveals that Smith family members can achieve dramatic capability improvements through extended experience and challenge exposure. Summer's enhanced confidence and intelligence after simulation exposure demonstrates that family potential isn't limited by inherent factors, but by circumstantial opportunities for growth. Beth and Space Beth's regression timeline shows alternative versions can directly confront their shared psychological origins through literal age manipulation. Their regression reveals that different timeline choices represent varying coping mechanisms for identical abandonment trauma rather than fundamentally different personality types. These recent developments establish a clear pattern showing that the most significant Smith family evolution occurs through character transcendence rather than dimensional replacement, suggesting every family member possesses capabilities exceeding their traditional limitations when circumstances provide opportunities for genuine growth beyond Rick's influence and control. Now, if this video opened your eyes to the deeper Rick and Morty multiverse, smash that like button, subscribe for more mind-bending breakdowns, and let me know in the comments which timeline shocked you the most. Check out how Jerry went from loser to hero in Season 8, and twisted Easter eggs in Rick and Morty that reveal everything for hidden secrets you definitely missed. Subscribe and become part of our interdimensional family.